Okay, so let's see. We didn't meet last week because I was gone, but we met the week before, and we looked at those, the graphing inequalities. So students were not graphing inequalities correctly because they didn't understand when we use an open or closed circle, and didn't understand the value of the variable in context of a number line. So when you zoomed in on those two misconceptions, the open or closed, and like what it actually means, your mastery increased. So what actions did you take? I know that was 2 weeks ago, but what actions did you take that led to increased mastery?
I think we were just explicit in like naming the misconception and like having a debrief about it. I think we did, I don't remember. I thought we did a guided discourse around like that error. Like having students talk, like name and say that error out loud helped.
Good. You didn't do a guided discourse, you did a model. Remember Josh did the lesson the next day? At the end he said...
That's right.
So what was effective about that question you asked? I think that was the key lever. I know it was a while.
I don't remember.
You asked why did we do an open circle and in what situations would we use to close? What would we use a closed one?
The CFU at the end. Yeah.
And why was that?
Was that a stop and jot? Am I remembering that right?
And why is that such an important question to ask?
It just tells us if students are like understanding that key mistake or not, right? So it's like, if we model it again but don't ask that CFU at the end, we don't know if they actually know the difference.
And it makes it so transferable. It's not just like, what is the answer to this one? Great, move on. It's like, why is it this? And when would we use it differently? So today I want to dive into the first part of your objective from yesterday, which was students will be able to create a two-variable equation / inequality and explain the solutions in context. But first I want to look at your pre-work. You did the know and do statements. You focused a lot on the second objective, which is what the solutions mean in the graph. But I want to take a minute to have you take a minute to add on to this first objective. What do students need to be able to know and do to be able to create a two-variable equation and explain the solution in context? So add a little bit more to each side for that one. Alright, for that first objective, the writing the two-variable inequalities or equations, what did you add to it for the no?
That a constant means a number that is not multiplied by a variable, and that rates increase by some number every blank. Their rates use multiplication and are coefficients to a variable.
Okay, I'm plugging my computer in because it's about to die. The only thing that I have that I didn't hear you say is a pretty simplistic, like, come on computer, a pretty simplistic, just conceptual understanding of like in problems like this, there's going to be two variables representing two unknown qualities. understanding just that idea of there's two things we don't know here that we're solving for. So two variables represent two unknown quantities. Why is that important?
I think it can help students like differentiate what one variable stands for and like separate out like the meaning of their equation.
I think the meaning is real important, right? It's like sometimes students can get overwhelmed with a problem like this, but like understanding like sometimes there's gonna be two unknown quantities and there's gonna be two variables, and that's okay, and just kind of chunking that in the brain. What about the do statements? What did you add for that objective?
Specifically, like you need to annotate to identify what the variable stands for and name it. That's what I meant by identify, but
I wrote it as mark up a word problem for key info.
yeah, and that was what my goal was today. Like in my model problem was like marking up that like this variable stands for 0.2 of a mile, the tenths of a mile after the first 0.2 of a mile, and like let's literally write that in the margin, and then we're gonna subtract 2. That's also where I thought like the gap was from my first day.
Okay. We're gonna look at work, so I think your hypothesis is right. But we're gonna look at what we can do to like stamp that better, because I also agree that I think that's the gap. But so mark up a problem for key info, and then what else did you add?
Just write the rate as the coefficient and the constant as plus or minus whatever number.
Right. And I also put like when given a quantity, associate it with a variable. Like for example, in that question 2 on here, they had to understand that like the 250 went with the 0.2. So when given a quantity, associate it with. I was struggling with whether to use the word associate or not, but I think that makes sense. Associate with a variable. All right, let's look at your exemplar. What are the keys? We're looking at specifically question 2, because I think this is the highest leverage, most transferable thing. So what are the keys to your exemplar for number 2?
Oh, I see a gap. So I marked up the problem and annotated, but I didn't write anything in the margins. But then when I wrote my equation, I identified that like 0.8 means we should actually substitute in 6 because we already paid for 2. And I would argue that you should write that up here too. I have students all day label this a constant after.
I would even say that you don't even have to do this to really answer the problem if you can identify the key information. You don't have to know that that's a constant.
Well, so I would want them to label it as a constant only because I don't want them to choose C or D. Like I would hope like as soon as they
I don't think that
say.
prevents them from choosing C and D though. I see what you're saying, but I don't think like knowing that it's a constant like helps them to do that. I think it's just like goes back to that like knowing what like variable to assign a quantity to. As a number sense thing, I think, rather than knowing that it's a constant.
Okay.
Anyway, marking up the problem and then substituting that in. Great. So let's look at Acacia's and what are the keys from hers? What key things did she do in her exemplar that matched yours?
So the substitution is shown. She annotated almost all of the same things. And you can see that her substitution is good. She also showed that 8 minus 2 is 6, which I think should have been included in my exemplar.
Nice. And then Brandon, what's the gap? Brandon also got 100%, but what's the gap between Brandon and yours?
He just guessed. I think. I mean, he didn't mark it up, so that's like a huge.
I'm not sure if I particularly picked him because I don't think he guessed because he showed some other mathematical understanding in the other problems. But yeah, he could have just guessed. He got lucky. The point with Brandon is he got lucky.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at some students who almost had mastery. I know mastery was pretty low for this. It was 25%. But when I looked through the work, the most commonly missed question was number 2.
100%. Yeah.
which is actually like 3 is more challenging, I think, and most students miss number 2. So let's take a look at these guys, almost there. What's the gap between them?
They all chose B, and they didn't work up the problem, right? B, 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 yeah. They're substituting in 8 instead of 6. This is the gap I predicted before I taught this lesson. I know that this is the thing that's wrong.
Okay.
I don't know what to do to fix it.
We're gonna work on that. So what is the gap that you see? Let's name it crystal clear. The
They're
gap
not
is
annotating. They're not marking
So
the
what's the
problem.
impact?
So they're missing key information that they've already paid for the first 2 tenths.
Perfect. That's exactly what I had. My thing was students are not marking up the problem, so they're missing key information. Look at these 2. So I just want to point these out before we move on to planning the reteach. But with these couple of kiddos, it's almost like compliance marking up, right?
Yeah,
so they're
just
doing
marking
something,
stuff up.
but they're either just like marking things or marking all the things. But I'm gonna still include these as our bubble kiddos because they are kiddos who are almost there, but because they didn't mark up with intention, they didn't get there.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so let's stamp the gap. So what is the main error students are showing? You just said it, but I want to make sure we got it.
They're not intentionally marking up the problem, so they're missing key information.
Perfect. Write it down. That's exactly what I have.
Oh, I have my coaching binder in
Sorry.
my classroom.
Sorry,
Where should I write this down?
Just write it at the top. That's fine, as long as you have it somewhere. So that way we have that written out and in our minds when we're planning this reteach. Look at, that's why we're here.
I'm really having a hard time not getting emotional about today.
Don't put it in grade book. Reteach it tomorrow. Those are better. There's what it is. You can get frustrated if kids don't get it. You just reteach it. It's gonna happen sometimes. They've probably never been taught in their mathematical lives how to mark up a problem. You know? So
Yeah.
you can't get upset, you just reteach it. Sometimes that happens with lessons, like we think they'll get it one shot and then they don't, and that's okay. It is. I don't know. Okay, let's so mastery for the lesson was 25%. So based on this, more appropriate for a model or a guided discourse? Model. Okay. So this is what I'm thinking for tomorrow, because I know the linear equations in the tables it's like a shift, but I think it's important still to address this because marking up problems is going to be important for like any lesson going forward. So here's my suggestion. Cut one of those 2 questions from the do now, because it was 2 ones where you had like a table. I looked it up this morning, like a table and then some work they had to do with it, and I would suggest doing 1. And then jumping right into modeling. I don't think it even matters. I looked at questions 1 and 2 and you're doing it tomorrow. I don't think it matters which one you cut.
Do you think I should just cut both of them?
You should still do a do now or you're not gonna be able to do attendance and stuff like that.
So,
Just cut number 2.
and then
that's
I'm
easier.
pasting in this exit ticket?
Well, I think you should do this same problem. Yep, this yellow taxi charges.
So that's my model problem today.
Okay.
Because we talked about assuming that we were gonna need to do a reteach. Can I reteach this today? Instead of doing it in the do now, when we built this quarterly plan, if you remember, we said we almost assumed we're gonna need extra reps at this. So I
you still
have
have
it,
period 4, 6, 7 to go
right, now I can do this in the do now for tomorrow.
for first
for
and second.
Right, cause it's one class.
That's what we'll do. So
And they have
for
a
first
longer
and
class.
second period, let's do it in the do now tomorrow for those kids, and for your kids today,
Okay.
let's rewrite the model. That makes sense.
Okay.
Great,
I'm gonna make a second copy of this for first and second hour then.
great. Right now, though, let's plan your model for 4, 6, 7, so that way it's done, because you gotta do 4, 6, 7, like.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, I'm, right.
Alright, so here's what I wanna do to rework this model. So you're doing the same problem.
Yup.
What type of here I have an organizer. What type of model is it?
What's the recording thinking stops?
Okay. Here's the gap though. So I know you've heard of mold before.
Yeah.
And the part that they're messing up is this marking up the problem part.
Right.
So I think that like when I heard you saying like annotate over here and circle this and stuff like that, it might get confusing to kiddos if you're not doing it the same way every time. And so some kind of acronym like CUBS or something like that, or even just CUB, would help.
So I know about Cubs. I don't disagree with the idea of it, but just circling the numbers to me has always been, that's not annotating. Because there's a lot of numbers that don't matter, like purposely.
But they're not marking up the problem at all, and so maybe annotating is phase 2, but they're not marking it up at all. I think you have to mark up to be able to annotate. Make sense? Because we saw that students were marking up nothing or marking up nonsensical things on here.
So specifically, what do we want? Like when I look at this problem,
If they circle the numbers and underline the key information, that would be enough to start.
do you think that's gonna move it?
I do.
I want them to write in the margins, and that's what like this doesn't
I think that's like phase 2. They're not marking up the problem at all. If we just got them in the habit now of circling the numbers and underlining the key information, that's step 1. Then being able to make a margin note is like next level.
Can I push and just like say like we should teach them to do those 2 things? All of like circle the keywords, underline all that, and also write in the margin. I feel like this problem, if you don't write in the margin, if you don't say like
That's spelled CUM. So like if you did circle the numbers, underline the key information, and margin note, what's another letter we can do? So I think you need to standardize.
I always say just notes.
Circle the numbers. Yeah, that still doesn't spell a word. I do think it's helpful to have something sticky that you can have on the wall. This is how we mark up a problem. Circle the numbers, underline key information. Yeah.
I know about Cubs. I'm
Bracket the question doesn't really help us, though, in this scenario. Like if
I
you
think
wanna
there's a
do
lot of
margin
things-
notes,
yeah.
circle the number, underline the key information. I think that's like where we want to go.
I mean, I want them to bracket the question in general. So often, like answering the question, that's a key part. I just want them to also take just notes or write in the margins, so like write in margins.
Yeah, that doesn't.
I don't know that them needing to memorize an acronym is more helpful than just like putting up a poster and saying like, you need to do this for every problem. You need to circle the keywords or circle the numbers, underline the key phrases, bracket the question, and write in the margins.
It's not memorizing the acronym, it's the steps their brain should take. And by having an acronym, it helps them remember the steps they should take. But I hear you on needing to add something in about margin notes.
So I could make an anchor chart that said these are the 4 things you need to do when you're marking up a word problem.
Yeah,
Like
what does
every
state
time.
the answer sentence mean? Like,
They need to like explain in context, which is
Yeah,
why
which is
I've
like
always
the
heard
solving part.
cubes, which is
what is the E?
explain in context.
And then S would be what?
I don't remember.
Solve? No.
Hmm.
I did pies when I taught physics. Problem, information, equation, solve.
I mean, in
Picture, information, equation.
Stat,
Circle the numbers, underline key info, bracket the question.
I'm just gonna tell them to write in the margins. I like want to see that.
Yeah, I wish that we could make a letter for it.
Say cub and write in margins.
Cube, explain in margin.
Sure.
Okay. Explain in margin. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so with this in mind, let's script out what you're gonna say to model this problem. First, I'm gonna circle the numbers. Second, I'm gonna underline the key information. Third, I'm gonna
Well, first I would just read it.
Right.
So yesterday's exit ticket, we had a lot of people that got 67s, 2 out of the 3 questions right, and today, we're gonna like stick with this and show that absolute determination to get.
Pause. Why did we have so many kids getting 67s? What were they not doing?
So yesterday what I noticed is students who missed this were not intentionally marking up the problem, so they were missing key information, which led them to choose a distractor.
Right, say that shorter.
Yesterday we didn't mark up the problem intentionally, so we missed key info.
Great. That's simple for kids. They're like, oh, if I just mark up the problem. They hear that and they're like, oh, I can handle marking up the problem.
Yeah. So today I'm going to show you all how to intentionally mark up the problem.
Perfect.
So that we don't get distracted by simple mistakes. As I go through, record my thinking steps. First, read the problem. Don't do anything, just read it. Yellow taxi charges $2.50 for the first 0.2 miles a person drives. They then charge 15 cents for every tenth of a mile after the first 0.2 miles. C represents the total cost for a customer riding in the taxi, and M represents tenths of a mile ridden after the first 2 tenths were traveled. Second, we're going to read it again, but this time we're going to intentionally mark up by circling the numbers, underlining key phrases, bracketing the question, and then explaining in the margins. So let me show you what I mean. First, let's circle the numbers. Yellow taxi charges $2.50 for the first 0.2 miles. I would explain in the margin as I go, like what that means.
Yeah, here's what I'm thinking. So, ladies and gentlemen, I noticed yesterday on the exit ticket that we had so many people that were close to mastery. Oh, how do you say it better? Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday we had low mastery, and I realized it's because very few of us were marking up the problem. So today I'm going to show you how to mark up the problem. The first thing you need to do is read the problem. And I'm going to tell you 3 things to do, and they're just going to spell out cube. First, you're going to circle the numbers. Second, you're going to underline the key information. Third, you're going to bracket the question. And fourth, you're going to explain in the margin. So I'm going to show you what these look like here, and then go through and do it.
So, but
I would almost front load the steps and then show them how to do it.
right, but then as I'm going, if I was marking up this problem, as I circle the numbers, I would explain the margins. That's what I would do.
I think
Because
that's
as
higher
I'm
I think that's higher level though. Well,
I would just like stop after each sentence and be like, okay, they charge $2.50 for the first 2 tenths of a mile a person drives. So I circled my numbers, and I'm just going to explain that it's $2.50 for first 2 tenths.
you skipped the step of underlining the key information. It's $2.50 for the first 0.2 miles. That would be like the key information.
0.2 is also a number.
That's true.
So it's first. So $2.50 for the first 2 miles. So I've circled my numbers and I've underlined and explained in the margin that it's $2.50 for the first 2 tenths of a mile. They then charge 15 cents for every tenth of a mile after the first 2. So 15 cents for every tenth of a mile after the first 0.2. It makes me think that I don't get charged 15 cents for the first 2
I think this part is good. Let's go back to that beginning. What does the beginning sound like again? Because I do think it's like front loading the thinking steps.
So
and then,
as I mark this
and
up,
then showing how to use it. So let's do this apply as CFS.
so do you want me to go all the way back?
To the very beginning. Yesterday I noticed.
Yes. Yesterday I noticed that mastery is pretty low, but that's because a lot of us just weren't intentionally marking up the problem, so we missed key info. So I've got yesterday's number 2, and as I go through, I'd like y'all to see how I apply a checklist of how to mark up a problem. So this checklist is going to spell out cube. C-U-B-E. As I attack this word problem, first I just want to read it. But after I've read it, I'm going to read it again, and the second time, I'm going to circle all the numbers. I'm going to underline key info. I'm going to bracket the question, and I'm going to explain in the margins. So yellow taxi charges, I've read the problem, I'm reading it a second time. Yellow taxi charges $2.50 for the first 0.2 miles a person
Okay,
drives.
do it again from the beginning. I think that's gonna be the framing for this, and explaining clearly that part is gonna be the highest leverage thing. So
Okay.
yesterday I noticed,
Yesterday I noticed that mastery was pretty low, but when I looked at the data, a lot of us just missed question 2 because we weren't intentionally marking up the problem. So we missed key info. Today, I'm going to show y'all question 2 and a way to mark up the problem intentionally. So as I go through this, see how I use this checklist cube to mark up the problem and get all the key info. Let's go ahead and write that. We're going to figure out C, U, B, E. First, I'm going to read the problem. Okay. Now, a second time, I'm going to read the problem again, but I'm going to circle, C stands for circle, all the numbers.
I haven't given you to do that yet.
Oh,
You front load the
underline.
steps. Yeah, front load the steps
Yeah.
and then show them how to do it. But I just saw you say circle the numbers and you went through and circled them.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but do all this stuff. So I'm going to circle the numbers, underline the key information, bracket the question, and explain in the margins. So now, circling the numbers. As I read, I'm circling the numbers, underlining the key information, bracketing the question. I'm going to explain in the margins. This piece.
So you're gonna say like, so I noticed yesterday all the things, and we're gonna there's a way I'm gonna teach you how to intentionally mark a problem. It spells cube, circle the numbers, underline the key information, bracket the question, explain in the margins. Now I'm gonna show you how I apply all of these things to a problem, because yesterday's exit ticket yellow taxi charges $2.50. For the first 0.2 miles a person drives. Okay, I need to circle those numbers, 250, underline the key information. Right, I think like you don't just go circle all the numbers and then go back and underline all the things and then bracket the question. You do it as you go, like all of these together. That's why I think it's important to front load all of them at once and say like circle numbers, underline, bracket, explain in margin. Just because as you model, you don't do those separately. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, it's like one step. It's not.
Yeah. So, this is the part I want to practice one more time. The transition between this to this. So, what are you gonna say right after you say an E? Explain in margin.
So I'm going to show y'all how to apply this checklist to mark up a problem and get all the key information.
Perfect. How is that gonna be different?
Well, by front loading this, I think, well, in general, giving them a method for marking the problem, I really hope is going to get them to identify some of the key information.
It will.
Can I ask one more thing? So I think they get this key information and like, even after being told that we've already paid for the first 2/10, a lot of students would either substitute in 2 or they'd substitute in 8. And that happened in first hour today, which is why I'm bringing it up. Like, how can I attack that misconception better? Because like, right now I'm sitting here like,
I think that's like a zooming out and in context thing, and that might be phase 2. Like, what does this 0.2 actually represent? Oh, it's the first point. What does that mean? Oh, that means like, it's like the think aloud piece.
if they don't get that, they're gonna choose B again.
I think less are gonna choose B if you first address marking up the problem. I hear you. It is a gap, but I think it's the phase 2 gap. The phase 1 gap is they're not even marking up the problem at all. There's
Okay.
multiple gaps within this question, right? But I think the first highest leverage one to do is to get kids to start to mark up the problem, because that's gonna be transferable to any problem. Phase one.
I mean, I just don't know when we're gonna do phase two. Like, you get a test, and you're gonna miss this.
We have lots of lessons leading up to this. Please don't try to attack that today. Focus on marking up the problem.
Okay,
So what is the gap you're closing today in the model?
marking up the problem.
That's phase one. We'll get to phase two. I guarantee you that by marking up the problem, less kids are gonna substitute in the wrong
I'm
thing.
sure that's true. I just-
Okay,
Yeah.
so stick with this, because if you try to add in something else, it's gonna muddy closing this gap. So for 4th, 6th, and 7th, can you just let me know how kids do in question 2, the exit ticket?
Mhm.
And then we'll do like a half sheet or something like that for period 1, 2 tomorrow. Sound good?
Yeah.
Alright, I need to scan in these bubble kiddos work, and I'm gonna bring you the folder in like 5 minutes.